Hey guys, Claire Cantrell here with Spread the Well, and I want to follow up our tendonitis discussion and talk to you a little bit about bursitis. So lots of people get that diagnosis. We don't get much information along with that diagnosis. So I like to kind of break down for my patients to truly describe what a bursa is and why when it's inflamed, it becomes way more problematic. And completely defeats the purpose of what it's there for. And again, like we did with the tendonitis, how do we manage bursitis? First off, much like tendonitis, the bursa does not get inflamed for no reason. The bursa gets inflamed from either compression or really aggressive forces, too much forces that are, in zones where they are supposed to be supporting nice fluid, controlling friction, all of that kind of stuff. So we have bursa all over our body. So there are certain ones that tend to be more problematic. There's a subdeltoid bursa. We've got the pes anserine bursa in the knee. We have the hip bursa. There are zones that have lots of bursa or bursae. Look at me, tips. We have bursa everywhere. So even the areas that you don't necessarily think that have bursa, any place in our body that has either two muscles that are right next to each other in closed compartments that have to move independently of each other, or two tendons that are, kind of having to work over each other, or a tendon over a bony prominence or a muscle over a bony prominence, that's where you're going to find these bursae. So what they are, we used to call them like they're fluid-filled sacs. Well, that gives the impression of we've got like a little satchel with fluid in it. And what it actually is it's way more, I give the example of like if you took a piece of saran wrap or, plastic wrap like that, and you put some drops of oil and folded it over, okay? Our bursa should be that thin, right? And they should, if I just then took those two sides of that plastic wrap, it should be that fluid and movable, okay? That way, all those areas and all those little compartments where those bursa sit, you've got good interaction of muscles and tendons and over bones and no friction. So they are trying to create an environment where we get good fluid movement, okay? So I'll give you the example in the book. This is in the knee. So you'll see these little blue guys, okay? Those are the bursa, and you can see they're underneath these tendons. They're underneath big muscle groups and different areas. So, that's not just the only place they are. They're in lots of places, okay? Also in the foot and hand, the tendons, so we've got a lot of muscles that then become tendons that operate the hand. Each of those tendons are wrapped in what we call a tendon sheath. That's the same quality of that bursal, tissue. So very smooth, control friction, allow for our tendons to be able to move and glide easily without any problems, okay? So what ends up happening is when the muscle or the tendon or the muscles and the structures that those bursa are trying to support become insufficient, too tight, working too hard, doing too much, doing things that they shouldn't be doing, that's when we get too much friction over that bursa. And that irritability generates the production of inflammation. So when we get that inflammatory process that kicks up in our body, which is inflammation gets a bad rap, it is a part of our body's ability to heal itself and repair tissue and remodel and rebuild. And but the problem becomes that little bursa, so that little, nice fluid, oily sac, then fills up with almost like this gunky inflammatory fluid. And this gunky inflammatory fluid is not smooth, and it is takes up space, and it is irritable. Those chemicals in our tissue create a pain response, create a threat response. So it ends up that these nice, friction absorbers then end up creating more problems than they are helping, okay? So we have to figure out the why that bursa got inflamed, okay? It's not just that we get a shot in that bursa or just even cross-friction massage and get some good flushing out. We've got to figure out why that bursa got inflamed in the first place. The best example I like to use is going back to my IT band, okay? So when we talk about IT band syndrome, we have IT band syndrome of the hip, we have IT band syndrome of the knee. Please go watch my video about IT band syndrome. But the most important thing about this is that when this whole lateral construct gets so tight, TFL gets tight, glutes start pulling, vastus lateralis, that IT band starts pulling up on the knee, all of that stuff. What ends up happening is it compresses against the greater trochanter. Okay, so that is that big bony prominence we have in our hip, not our pelvic bone, but that big, the most prominent part of our hip. That's our greater trochanter. Okay, and that IT band and the vastus lateralis sits right on top of that. Okay, so if this tissue gets so tight that now anytime we're moving and generating force with the hip or the knee, that's smashing right over that bursa that's sitting right on the greater troch, you're going to get significant irritability in that bursa. You're going to get an inflammatory process that kicks on. What bursa feel like in terms of symptomology is they are significantly tender to touch, okay? And that's how we know the difference between, do I just simply have a trigger point in my TFL, okay, which arguably causes pain in the same exact area that we're having the bursitis. You would be able to point tender. You would be able to point or find a specific tender spot that makes you jump right off the mat. These are the people who also come in that are like, I absolutely cannot lay on my side. It is way too painful. Okay, so any sort of compression into that bursa is highly, highly irritable. Okay, so much like we did with tendinitis, what do we do about it? Well, number one, if I again go straight to, your bursa is inflamed because this TFL is too tight and then the IT band's pressing on it. So we just need to treat the TFL. I'm not going to get a lot of respect from people who are trying to feel heard, right? Okay. I'm going to go straight to where that little bursa is. You can't see it in this photo because it's under that big guy. And I'm going to do some gentle cross-friction massage. And I say gentle because this is even more tender than you would have with just a tendinitis, okay? This is probably some of the most point-specific tenderness that I see in patients is true bursitis, okay? So I will do lots of gentle cross-friction massage. And again, what I'm doing is I'm generating some heat, some mechanotransduction. I'm getting some good circulation to pass through there and flush out some of that gunky stuff, okay? The other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go and treat the compartment, the myofascial compartment and the elements that are creating too much pressure on that bursa, okay? So I'm going to do my trigger point release to my TFL muscle. I'm going to roll out my vastus lateralis. I'm going to even get into my glutes because those glutes attach into the back of the greater troch. So they can be problematic too. They can be pulling on that fascia of the IT band as well. So I've done videos that describe both how to do the TFL releases, the vastus lateralis, and the glutes. Target those areas for trigger points. I gun. Probably one of the most effective things that I do for patients with bursitis is taping, okay? So taping has a lot of benefits in a lot of different ways. There's different tapes out there. Some tape is for support. Other tape is to ramp down tone in a muscle. For bursa, what I tend to do, and for the greater trochanter, what I like to do is I take my tape and I'll get like a little piece that's kind of my anchor piece, and I'll get two little wings. So I'll cut the tape in half lengthwise and I have two little wings. And I pull those down in and around, crisscrossing around the bursa. The other thing is I'll take just an eye strip of like a kinesio tape or a KT tape or something like that. And I tape and pull to where when it's taxed down, it takes the skin and the subcutaneous tissue right over that bursa and pulls it up and away. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm generating some space in there for that bursa to just breathe, for that inflammation to actually flush out of there. Okay, so actually I just got a text message from a client who I've been working with for a long time, and he's had some calf pain, he's had some Achilles pain. Most often what I can find is this retrocalcaneal bursa. So this bursa that's in the back of his Achilles tends to be the most tender and most bothersome. So the other day I did like a little taping technique where I basically just taped around his heel in both directions. So kind of from under the foot up and then around the heel. And all I was trying to do was take the skin and pull it up and away and give some space to his Achilles and the structures kind of on the front surface of that Achilles. And he texted me, he was able to work out. He had no pain for the first time in a very long time. So that's the type of thing that I can do. And of course I can send videos of how to do different taping techniques and stuff. But I want you to start understanding your diagnoses better. I want clinicians to start being able to use language where we can describe things to patients in a way that they can understand, so we lessen the burden of chronic pain in our world. The number one reason people have chronic, unrelenting, unresolved pain, a lot of times it's some, minor musculoskeletal thing that never healed properly because we didn't understand it properly. And our nervous system turns on, it gets more sensitized to that area and wreaks havoc. If we can start using better language and describing diagnoses better for our patients where they walk out and they understand themselves and they understand their body, we can do so much better for our people in this world and lessen the burden of chronic pain and opioid addiction and all of those things. So anyway, jumps off soapbox. I hope this was helpful on bursitis, and please follow me. If you're seeing this video on Facebook, follow me on Instagram at all_spread.the.well. I'll have lots of video content there as well. And anyway, please, reach out, and if you have comments, put them up there. If you have questions, reach out to me. So thanks.